Good morning. You're sitting with Pammielocs, and we're talking about another topic on Locks Talk this week. So this week we're going to talk about being tender-headed. What causes sensitive scalp or tender scalp? Is it just something that you never outgrew from childhood? Or is it something deeper down the rabbit hole that we need to look into? Let's see when we talk about it this week on Locks Talk. Welcome. Come. Welcome to another week of Locks Talk, where I talk about all things locks and loose natural hair. This week we are talking about scalp tenderness and sensitivity. They are very similar, but in a lot of ways have differences, and we're going to get into that. If you want to read any of my other blogs ahead, you may do so, and be reminded I will be reading from my laptop. Of the blog that I do write on my website, www.pammielocswithlove74.com. You may sign up, become a member. It's free right now. It's not going to be that way forever, so take advantage of it, okay? But I learned from working with clients that scalp sensitivity is major. But what really made me sit down and do more research on this particular topic is I had a client that said to me, I used to be really tender-headed as a kid, and then I wasn't, but all of a sudden it's back with a vengeance. And I was like, that kind of threw me off. Like, how does that happen? So of course, inquiring minds wanted to know. I learned so much from my clients, so was very important to me to sit down and really get down into the nitty-gritty of what can cause scalp tenderness to come back, because scalp tenderness and sensitivity isn't simply, I'm just tender-headed. And I'll as we continue through this conversation, you'll understand what I mean by that, okay? So let's get into it. Right in, and we read. Welcome to Locks Talk, where I talk about all things locks and loose natural hair. This week I am going to discuss the topic of scalp sensitivity and tenderness, the possibility of its causes, when you should consider seeking medical help or psychotherapy, and finally, some home remedies to help with treatment of sensitive scalp and tips to desensitize the scalp. As a loctician and stylist, one of the biggest challenges I've had to handle with clients are clients with tender and sensitive scalps. Some reasons for scalp tenderness can be caused by underlying medical conditions you may know nothing about or may not know can affect your scalp. So let us begin and look into what sensitive scalp is and how to identify it, and some of the helpful tips and remedies to treat it. So now we're going to discuss scalp sensitivity to scalp, okay? Common symptoms of a sensitive scalp are burning, stinging, dry scalp, vague discomfort in the scalp, and sometimes the trichodynia or trichodynia. Trichodynia is defined as discomfort, pain, or paresthesia of the scalp, often perceived as unpleasurable combing or brushing. Same thing, like if you have a brush with bristles on it, it could be very sensitive when it touches the scalp. According to research, ethnic variations are noted in scalp sensitivity. A study from French population has shown that 44.2% of population suffers from scalp sensitivity. The main triggering factors identified were pollution, heat, emotive factors, and hair products such as shampoos, conditioners, other products that you can use in your hair. Okay. Research has also shown that scalp sensitivity probably belongs to sensitive skin syndrome, and most patients declared sensitive skin in another area of their body. Scalp dysphagia is a cutaneous or affecting the skin, right? Condition characterized by pain and burning sensation without objective physical examination or findings. Sorry for the sound outside. The pain is often described as burning. Often there is an underlying psychosomatic cause, such as stress, depression, and anxiety, that also can cause scalp sensitivity. That hasn't been hard for me to identify with some of my clients. It hasn't been, because what happens is, oftentimes when I have a client who has scalp sensitivity and describes the pain as burning or physically reacting to it without my physically handling their hair, that gives me a sign that they may be having something in relation to a psychosomatic cause of their pain and not from their being handled, because I literally will not be touching the person's hair and they will react. I've had one client that did that, and I wouldn't say frightened me, but it made me feel very uncomfortable, because in their mind they thought that I was handling their hair and I wasn't even touching them physically, and it bothered me. It did. I'm not going to act like it didn't. It bothered me and it made me feel very uncomfortable. Unfortunately, I could not continue working with this client, because after several times trying to communicate about it, they weren't open to it. So it's unfortunate that didn't work out, and that's okay. Like I said, I'm not for everybody and everybody's not for me. So, and it was open platform given to discuss it without there being any judgment or anything, but they were in complete denial of the fact that I wasn't touching their hair. You were pulling it when I didn't even touch their hair. Like, literally there was air between my hand and their hair, and that just bothered the heck out of me. It really did. Not anymore, but it did then, right? So psychosomatic means the discomfort is caused or aggravated by a mental factor, such as an internal conflict of stress. And without going into, there was cause for that in this particular client's case, and I'm not going to get into that because that ain't none of your business. No. But yeah, okay. So continuing on. Now, this is not the same factor when it comes to children, and oftentimes it can seem very similar. However, it can relate to children too, especially if they are being raised in a very stressful or abusive household. So be mindful of that. Children naturally have a more sensitive scalp than adults do. So it's natural that children will be tender-headed when they're getting their hair combed. But when it's something like when you're not even touching them and they're, that's something you need to look into, seriously. Babies' scalps are extremely sensitive, but as children grow, their scalp sensitivity lessens a little each year. For some children, sensitivity does not reduce due to sensory processing disorder, SPD, which means they find it difficult to process sensory information such as sound, movement, and touch, causing them heightened reactivity. This is a case of sensitive scalp for children and some adults that you can work on desensitizing. Now, desensitizing, simply put, is to make less sensitive, right? It is a process that takes time and patience in order to build the trust and their confidence in you not to hurt them. You have to be, if you're a stylist, loctician, hairdresser, cosmetologist, all of the titles that entails someone who does other people's hair, braider, you have to be sensitive to your client and don't undermine them when they're telling you that it hurts. Because even if you're not physically doing anything to hurt them, it doesn't mean it don't hurt. Like I said, it could be something that's psychosomatic that triggers them in a way, knowing that you ever tripped or fell and you hurt your shin or your foot or whatever, and somebody goes, "Oh, let me see," and you're like, and they didn't even touch your toe because you already set your mind to accept that there's going to be pain. So it's weird. Yeah, it's weird like that, for real. So, just keep that in mind. If desensitizing with adults is unsuccessful, it may be due to psychosomatic causes and tenderness in relation to underlying medical condition, which we will soon get into within this discussion. So, yeah. There are some helpful remedies to help aid in desensitizing the scalp, using shampoos that are helpful in soothing the scalp. It's one. There are a number of shampoos on the market that are helpful and healthy. Okay, one of my favorite is shampoo that contains tea tree oil, oat milk, or brands is specifically formulated to treat eczema. Because sometimes eczema, if you have a client that suffers from eczema, they also suffer it on their scalp, and it's painful when it's on their scalp. Very common cause for sensitive scalp in both children and adults. So, aloe gel is a godsend for helping soothe sensitive scalps. It is. For loose natural clients, it is important to detangle the hair prior to shampooing with the use of a good detangling moisturizer that is formulated for sensitive scalp and either a wide tooth comb or a specially designed detangling brush for sensitive scalp. Working with small sections at a time, it is imperative to hold the hair in your hand and use the detangler as it was, not to put too much pressure or tension on the scalp. So just combing straight down through the hair without holding the hair in place and just working with a little bit at a time. Plays a big factor in not gaining trust. So make sure you hold on to the hair so that it's not pulling and really pulling too much tension on that person's scalp. Okay. Let me find my space again. Scalp stimulation and massage with the use of essential oils can also be very helpful to aid in desensitizing. Right? But most of all, take your time and communicate with your client or your child if you are a parent. Keep them involved with the process and decision making for each step. This is more so with children than adults, but this goes for both. Okay. This helps tremendously in gaining their trust. With my children and some adult clients who requested, I often sing to them while I detangle and wash their hair. Yeah, I love to sing, so. We would often have very healing and therapeutic conversations to help keep their stress levels low as well. It is crucial to have the trust of a client who suffers from scalp sensitivity and keep them involved throughout the entire process. That's very important. Make sure, and even if they don't have scalp sensitivity, make sure that if you are a professional, keep your client involved throughout the entire process. Now, if they want you to shut the hell up, then shut up and just do your job, because there are some of those out there too. So now we're going to get into some of the causes. Scalp tenderness. Scalp tenderness is slightly different from scalp sensitivity, and it most often caused by an underlying medical condition. Many of these conditions can go untreated because it is often misconstrued by the client, who simply thinks or says, "Oh, I'm just tender-headed." But if it is consistently tender long after your hair has been treated and it isn't over tightly done, then there may be a cause of concern, and you may want to seek medical attention just to be sure. Let's take a deeper look at the scalp tenderness and its causes. Scalp tenderness is defined as pain, inflammation, tingling, numbness, irritation, itching, throbbing, or sensitivity to scalp. It may be linked to immune processes in response to a variety of conditions. Some scalp tenderness is caused by conditions affecting the blood vessels, nerves, and tissues below the surrounding the scalp. Scalp tenderness can accompany common conditions such as headaches, allergies, psoriasis, eczema, and hair loss. Scalp tenderness is linked with many forms of headaches involving the nerves that run from the back of the neck to the forehead. As previously noticed, tenderness can be linked frequently to a range of skin conditions, including rashes, sunburn, insect bites, and head lice. These skin conditions can cause inflammation, pain, tenderness, flaking, and some skin of the skin, pulling, and even makes the scalp pus and bleed. I know it sounds disgusting, but it's the facts. We need to make sure that we know what's going on. More causes of scalp tenderness are acne, allergic reactions caused by contact allergens, and viral infections that cause skin sores such as shingles and measles, tight hairstyles, headbands, and helmets, regular or improper use of products that cause scalp sensitivity, hair dryness, flat irons, hot curlers. Over brushing your hair or using a hard bristle brush can also affect the sensitivity of your scalp. General scalp discomfort can sometimes be linked to your hairstyling habits. Scalp tenderness is a fairly common complaint linked with several medical conditions that affect many people. Migraines, tension headaches, and autoimmune disorders and scalp infections are some of the top causes for scalp tenderness, aside from simply having hypersensitive scalp. Let's look at some of those conditions. Folliculitis. You remember I talked about that and touched on that? It's a bacterial staph infection in the hair follicles. Folliculosis and carbunculosis, scalp, are skin infections I like to describe as giant scalp pimples. They are skin infections that form lumps and pus called furuncles and carbuncles. A furuncle abscess, which is an abscess, forms when the hair follicle and the skin surrounding it becomes infected. A carbuncle is made up of a cluster of furuncles and goes much deeper into the skin. So it depends on how severe it is. Okay. Scalp tenderness also occurs when the hair is dirty. When the scalp is not cleaned properly or often enough. When you go too long without shampooing your hair, oil and dead skin cells can start to build up around the hair shaft at the root and cause sensitivity. While a little oil can be beneficial to the hair, too much oil can suffocate the hair root and lead to inflammation. Also, ladies, when you are on your cycle, you produce a hormone that increases pain sensitivity, which causes your scalp to become tender and sensitive to everything. So like with my hair, I generally wash my hair every 2 weeks. However, there are times where I need to wash it sooner. And a telltale sign for me, especially when it's warmer in the summertime, I start to get sensitivity because I'm not tender-headed, but when my scalp starts to feel tender, I know that is like that skin cells and dirt and oil and stuff that started to build up and kind of push its way down towards my scalp, and it gives me a little bit more sensitivity. I'm like, okay, it's time to wash my hair. And then once I wash my hair, it goes away. So listen to your scalp when it starts talking to you, especially if you're not tender-headed and you start feeling like tenderness. Go wash your hair. It may not be how your hair is styled. It's just generally, okay, you have some stuff in your hair and you need to clean it. Can you clean your scalp? And again, you don't necessarily have to wash all of your hair, but you can tend to your scalp. Future vlogs, again, we're going to just narrow down a lot of the treatments and things that I spoke about in the past. So make it easier for you to just look it up without having to watch a whole long video, okay? There are a number of autoimmune disorders that aid in scalp tenderness as well. But before I get into that, I want to backtrack because it's important to know that hair loss, as mentioned previously, is also a cause for scalp tenderness. Alopecia areata is when all of the hair falls out in round clumps from the scalp and sometimes off the body as well. It occurs when the immune system attacks the hair follicles, and it may be brought on by high levels of stress as well. So there is a connection there, all right? Other factors that can cause hair loss in addition to scalp tenderness include poor diet, especially one lacking in protein and iron, lupus, hyperthyroidism, or Hashimoto's thyroid syndrome. And therapies in relation to cancer also causes hair loss, such as chemotherapy and radiation treatments. So think back to when you were a child. You might have been tender-headed, right? And maybe have outgrown it. But then suddenly it came back with a vengeance. Perhaps it did not. Perhaps you may have developed a condition that is causing the tenderness, or you may have some healing work, to work through psychologically. Now, psychologically, things can cause and trigger scalp sensitivity as well. I'll bet you're wondering how that can happen, right? If you resist to the things that might be that you need to deal with psychologically, like past traumas and things like that, or you suffer from mental disabilities such as PTSD, anxiety, depression, chronic depression, especially, or you've gone through traumatic things. Let's just say that. I don't even want to trigger anybody by mentioning them, but if you've gone through traumatic things, but you've never dealt with it, you didn't do the shadow work to figure out how to cut or kill those generational curses that was passed down so that you don't pass it along, or you can have more peace in your latter years of life. So the resistance to not do that can actually have a physical effect on your health. And your scalp is telling you that it's having a physical effect on your health by its tenderness. Listen to it, okay? A routine physical exam and blood work can help you find that. If there's no physical evidence as to why your scalp is so hypersensitive, it is a very strong possibility it may be caused by a psychosomatic cause, which may require some psychological therapy and healing. Be kind to your scalp. Give yourself grace. And don't just assume that I'm tender-headed. You just may be missing the link connecting you to a treatable medical condition. So please follow up. Listen to your scalp. If it's trying to tell you something, and if you find that there is a medical condition, then follow the advice of your medical professional that helped you diagnose it. And if you're more holistic like I am, take that information that you and your doctor discussed to an herbologist, a certified herbologist, and they can help you find the different herbs that can help treat your condition. That was it. I really hope that this particular week's blog was very helpful, because I know it was helpful for me. As I said previously, I've said this before on a live with a dear friend when we were talking about how to develop a great relationship with your loctician in that particular discussion. But anybody who is in the professional field that's handling your hair, that requires building a relationship with them. And although I have been trained to do the things that I do with my clients and their hair, I learned more from them than I did in the classroom. What do I mean by that? It's because what you learn in the classroom is general 101 information on do's and don'ts of taking care of hair. But what I mean by what I learned from my clients is this. I don't look at everybody. Generally speaking, I don't put all of my eggs in one basket and assume that that's the problem with every single person, or that's the solution to fix every single person. Everybody has their different issues and their different problems and their different desires and their different needs, not just physically from doing their hair, but psychologically in handling their hair and things like that. I do have some clients that have scalp sensitivity due to stress, which is why we have very therapeutic conversations. So when they leave here, not only is their hair done, but whatever they were stressing about has decreased significantly, because they were given the opportunity to really just discuss it. Anybody will tell you I'm the queen of holding people accountable for whatever they bring to a situation, especially when it's filled with stress. Because you have to, when you're trying to maintain your peace, you have to pick and choose your battles. You have to pick and choose what you're going to give your energy to. If you're giving your energy to something that is just not going to resolve and just cause you more despair and grief and stress, it is not worth it. It's not. Trust me. There are things that people bring to my attention regarding myself or what somebody else may have thought of me or said about me, and I'm like, I don't care. And they were like, wow, it's that. And I'm like, I haven't been this way forever. It took a lot of years of training myself to not give a shit about what other people think or say about me. I can't change another person's perception of me. I can only be who I am and be true to myself and hold myself accountable for the stuff that I do. So that's what I encourage. So until next week, have a great week, and thank you for joining me on Lox Talk. Sending you love from my chair to yours. Bye.